Hello everyone, welcome back. Welcome back to Soul Academy. I've done this, the start of this episode a bunch of times and I keep restarting. And I'm not going to do that again. If I waffle on, then I'm just going to continue on through. I'm doing my best here. Okay, I'll shut up about that now. This is part 2 of episode 2 of Soul Academy. And I am talking about the liberal arts. This episode I'm going to talk about the quadrivium, which are the final 4 of the 7 liberal arts. Last time I was talking about the trivium, which were the first 3 liberal arts. These are grammar, logic, and rhetoric, and they relate to human language. We can also, this is something I neglected to put in last time, so I'll say now, we can also look at these as knowledge, understanding, and wisdom, or we could see these as input, processing, and output. So knowledge, in the realm of grammar, we have knowledge, that is to know stuff, to kind of remember things and the names of things and stuff like that. Then in logic, we have understanding. So this is more than just knowing stuff, it's understanding things as well. To know the words and to know the music are different things. And then finally we have wisdom. Wisdom is about the choices that we make. It's about making good choices and not being a fool and making bad choices. At the bottom we have input, processing, and output. This is probably a more modern way of putting it, and it's something of a metaphor relating to computer technology. You have your input of information, you process the information, and then you display the information. It's the same process, whether you want to look at it as grammar, logic, rhetoric, whether you want to look at it as knowledge, understanding, and wisdom, it's the same process. Okay, so this is a way to learn, a way to think, and a way to communicate. It's a way to think for yourself. So this is why this episode is called Free Your Mind. This is how you free your mind, through education, and through not just education, but a clarity of thought that comes about by undergoing this process of knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. Okay, so that's the trivium. That was last time. So today I want to look at the quadrivium. So these are number, geometry, music, and astronomy. And the quadrivium relates to the mechanics of reality. It's the attempt to describe the way in which things can happen, and the way in which things do happen. And we can see them illustrated here by this pretty dodgy medieval drawing at the top right there. Okay, so I'm going to start with number, and I want to talk a bit about the prime numbers. So the phenomenon of number is something that within the liberal arts is understood to be a kind of emergent property of reality. It's not simply something that people have made up, and I would like to attempt to prove that. And in this attempt, I'm going to take the example of the prime number series. So you probably know that a prime number is a number that can only be divided by itself or by 1, and it can't be divided by any other numbers into a whole number. So, okay, what's so important about that? Well, this presents us with a problem. And here is the problem. So we have a cat here, and the cat has given birth to 6 kittens. Now, let's say we want to give these kittens away, but we don't want to give them away individually. We want each kitten to have at least one friend. And we don't want to give all of the kittens to one other person, because that's just moving the problem along to somebody else. And also we want to make things fair. We want to have the same amount of kittens distributed to different people. So in this case, we have 6 kittens. So like I said, we're not going to give them away one at a time. We're not going to give them all away. So we've got 2 choices. We can either give 2 kittens to 3 people. So 3 people get 2 kittens each. Or we can give 3 kittens to 2 people, so that 2 people get 3 kittens each. Okay, right. So, you understand, I'm sure many of you understand what prime numbers are, and you're like, yes, Lewis, skip to the end, what's the point? Okay, well, let's now suppose that you have 5 kittens. So we don't want to give one kitten away, we don't want to give them all away, and we want to make the distributions of kittens fair. And it turns out that we can't do this. It's not possible. It's not possible to follow these rules. Our only choices are to give 2 kittens to one person and 3 kittens to another person. We can't make it fair. The only way we can make it fair is by giving 1 kitten out at a time. But we don't want to do that. And the reason why we don't want to do that in this case is because you can do that with any number, right? You can, it doesn't matter what number of kittens I've got, I can always give away 1 to different people. And I can always give away all of them to one person, no matter what the number. Okay, so this is what makes the prime numbers prime. This is what's special about them, is that it presents us with this problem. We cannot share these kittens out evenly. Okay, so let's go back. So on the right here, I've got a list of these prime numbers, okay? So we can see here 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. And if you're a mathematician, you'll recognize this number series. Turns out the largest prime right now, as of December last year, is... now this is actually, the printout's inaccurate. It should be 2 to the power of 8, 2, 5, 8, 9, so on, minus 1 at the end. So the largest known prime right now is a number that has 24,862,048 digits. So it's an enormous number. And so yeah, it turns out that the primes don't just fizzle out. We don't get to a point where the numbers are so big that they can't be prime anymore. Like that doesn't seem to happen. What mathematicians are so fascinated about prime numbers is that we can't seem to find a pattern in the occurrence of these prime numbers. It seems random. But we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. I don't want you to think that this is a maths lesson. I'm trying to make a point about what the quadrivium is and how it relates to the nature of reality. So let's carry on with this analogy of kittens, right? So I've got a really high prime number here, 2,207 kittens. So if I had 2,207 kittens, I would still be faced with exactly this problem. I can't give them out fairly, right? Unless I give out all of them individually, or I give the whole bunch to one other person. And the prime number series, well, how can I put this? This is a truth that we have discovered about reality. Okay, so it doesn't matter if it's kittens being given out to people, or if it's microscopic particles orbiting around within different atoms, or it could be moons being distributed around planets and orbiting around planets. If we have a prime number, we have this problem, right? That problem, it just exists throughout reality. It doesn't matter what the scale, what the time, or anything like that. If it was moons around a planet, like if you've got a prime number amount of moons and they're heading towards a bunch of planets, you know that they can't all end up with the same amount of moons unless they all get one, right? And you don't have to observe the outcomes or anything like that. You just know that it's not possible, right? We've come across an impossibility. Now, you might say that that nothing is impossible. Sorry, I'm just going to go back to another picture of kittens for fun. And fine, pragmatically speaking, it's good to say that nothing's impossible, right? It's good to believe that you can achieve anything. However, literally speaking, number and mathematics can prove to us that there are certain things that are not possible. Okay, and this is one of those things. Okay, so as I said earlier, the prime number series doesn't seem to form a pattern. The number list just goes on and on forever, it seems, and nobody ever has found a formula to figure out what these numbers are. And people have been doing mathematics for a very long time, and we've had some amazing mathematicians on the case, and it's getting to the point now where we're just starting to think it's not even possible to find that pattern. So, one might then conclude that the prime numbers are random. They're just randomly distributed throughout the number series. However, it seems that they're not random. I'd like to draw your attention now to this gentleman, Stanislaw Ulam, who's a Polish mathematician. And rumor has it, according to urban legend, Ulam was in a boring lecture and he just out of nowhere was doodling these numbers. So he decided to draw the numbers 1 in the middle, counting up 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, in a spiral that spirals out. Okay, so you can see that on the diagram on the right. And then what Ulam did is he started circling the prime numbers to see if there was any kind of pattern. And we see that there is indeed the appearance of certain patterns. We've got these diagonal lines going on here within Ulam's spiral. So, what would happen if you were to do Ulam's spiral for a really long time? Well, the image on the left is an effectively zoomed out image of Ulam's spiral there. Okay, so we've counted up just thousands of numbers there and identified the primes as these black dots. For contrast, on the right, that is the same technique. It's a spiral of numbers, and we have basically just pointed out random numbers. Right, so the one on the right is what total randomness looks like, and the one on the left is what the prime number series looks like. So we can see that by comparing these two, the prime number series does seem pretty random, but it's more than that. It's more than random. There's something going on here. Okay. And this, so here's another image of Ulam's spiral zoomed out even further. Okay, and you can see that the prime numbers are more common amongst the lower numbers, but they don't become much less thinner, much less common on the outer edges there. Maybe if we could keep zooming out, we might discover that they do become less common on the outer edges. In fact, if you sort of blur your eyes a bit, you can see it's kind of fading into darkness in the middle. Perhaps it would fade out to whiteness on the outer edges. So yeah, Ulam spiral. Definitely some patterns going on within this randomness. And so, why am I talking about this? Well, the trivium is there to get us to understand the nature of reality, like how things work. And the prime number series is but one example of how reality reveals itself for having certain laws that it obeys, that it follows. I want to say, like, we could think of it as the mind of God. And, I apologize if, no, I don't apologize, but you might be allergic to that word, the G word. But, I don't mean it in like a religious indoctrination sort of way. I just sort of mean that, if God is has the ultimate say in everything, if God represents just what reality is, then this is a glimpse into the mind of that person. Okay, so about number. Here's another example of reality revealing itself to us. The cymatic series. So this is a practice known as cymatics. It's reasonably unexplored, this subject. So I think the world would benefit a lot from people practicing this more, because there are definitely discoveries to be made within this practice. So on the left here, we've got a plate, like a flat plate, and the plate is vibrating. And when the plate vibrates at certain frequencies, it creates these cymatic patterns. What we've got in this case is grains of rice just scattered on the top of this plate. And then we've got a person basically playing a tone through the plate. And when they switch from one tone to another, you see these different cymatic patterns. Okay, this is because there are standing waves within this plate. So when you play a certain frequency, some parts of the plate move a lot, and other parts of the plate don't move very much at all. So the parts of the plate that move a lot are the ones that end up black without any rice in them, and the bits of the plate that don't move at all end up with the rice in them. Okay, so as you go up through the frequencies, so you basically play a sound that starts low and then it goes up like that, and you keep going up through the frequencies, you find this cymatic series. And this has all been, a lot of this has been documented and illustrated. So, what does this tell us about the nature of reality? I mean, this is just vibrations, right? Well, what's interesting about the cymatic series is that the images that we see tend to resemble natural forms. Natural forms of biology, of like animal and plant biology. So here we've got a turtle. We see things like this Fibonacci spiral coming out from, I believe this was cymatics done with liquid. So that's what 33 hertz looks like. And again, we've got some cymatics done with liquid as well. What's interesting about doing cymatics with liquid is that you get a 3D representation of the standing wave rather than a 2D one that we had on the plate. So yeah, I mean, it seems as though these life forms have somehow vibrated into existence, or that vibration has had a profound effect on the form of these living creatures. So again, the quadrivium, the liberal arts, the whole study of this is about giving us clues into the nature of reality, the mind of God, as I stated earlier. Okay. So an excellent book on the quadrivium is simply called Quadrivium, and it comes from the same wooden books publisher that the Trivium was created by. It's a beautiful book. I'm going to show a few more. I'm going to show a few pages from this book within this talk as well to illustrate a few things. So that was number. Moving on to geometry. I won't talk too much about geometry, but I will say geometry is number in space. It is the properties of forms and shapes. And again, the quadrivium is telling us about the way things can occur and the way things can't occur. Because it is number after all, although it's number in space, it is still number. There are still impossibilities, literal impossibilities. So I've made some videos on my channel about geometry where I'm practicing creating some interesting geometric forms using a piece of software called GeoGebra. And I recommend checking out GeoGebra. It's a free application. It works out of the web browser, and you can use it to practice some geometry. And if you are an artist, if you're a visual artist, or if you're a musician, I'd really recommend practicing a bit of geometry. It will improve your game massively. Okay. So the next subject of the quadrivium is music, and this is number in time. So geometry is number in space, and music is number in time. Basically, we are playing with the air. It's the art of vibration, which comes with the territory of things like harmony and dissonance and rhythm and resonance and reverberation. So it's the art of vibration. And we all know music. Everyone on the earth, like we all have, what can I say? Well, not only, okay, we certainly all know what music is, and we've all been so immersed in so much music that we've got our opinions about what music we like and what music we don't like. I myself studied music at university. I've taught it, and there's a lot I could say, but this is just an introduction to the quadrivium. So if there's one thing that I could teach about music, just one thing I would say, I would be passing on a teaching, even from an old professor of mine, who said that if you want to study music, you should be listening to as much new music as you can tolerate, as you can handle. And when I say new music, I mean music that you don't know, music that's new to you. Okay? So to study music is not to simply listen to the same albums over and over again, which most people do, and it's okay to do that. But if you are doing that, you're not studying music. So if you're really to call yourself a student of music, then that is a core practice, I believe. And it's never been easier to do that. This is the easiest time to do that, to listen to music that you don't know yet. Okay, it doesn't have to cost you anything. You can get on YouTube. All right, well, maybe there's some startup cost to that. But if you have access to the internet, There is the whole wealth of music out there that you probably have never heard before. And if you can spare a bit of money, you could get a subscription to a music streaming service and just listen to all the things that you don't know. There are methods of investigation. So if there's an album that you like, ask yourself, is there a particular musician on this album that I like the sound of? So if it's a band that you're listening to, maybe someone in that band stands out to you as a player that you enjoy. Maybe you particularly like the drummer in a band. Okay, well then Google that drummer, have a look at their wiki page, find out what else that drummer has done. Have they been involved in other bands? Listen to those bands. Or you could take a look at a record label. Okay, you might notice that a few of your favorite musical acts that you listen to share the same record label. Okay, well, what other musical acts are published on the same label? These are ways that we can discover new music. So, there's so much about the technicalities of vibration that I wasn't expecting to find so fascinating. But when I started learning it at university, I realized how vibration is actually quite I want to say detailed, but that's an understatement. It's like an infinitely nuanced phenomenon that we really don't have a complete grasp of at all. But this is something for another video, I think. So the only thing I would say about music, really, to everyone is listen to as much of it as possible. Don't get stuck listening to the same thing all the time. Okay. Next, we have astronomy, the fourth liberal art of the quadrivium, the final liberal art. So, if geometry is number in space and music is number in time, then astronomy is number in space and time. Okay, it describes this form that is in motion, a three-dimensional form that changes over time. In the past, it was known as astrologica, and this was the ancestor of both astrology and modern astronomy as we know it today. So if you remember back at the first episode, the endeavor of alchemy was self-improvement. Not in all cases, there were various endeavors, but that kind of mental and spiritual transmutation of alchemy was about self-improvement in broad terms. And so astronomy in the past wasn't simply a sort of dry mathematical description. It was also taking into consideration how the positions of planets were affecting our moods and affecting our consciousness. Okay, so a little, it's not so much a lowdown of astronomy. I just want to pick a few things out of the art of astronomy to give you a taster of how the liberal arts approach it. So I've got a couple of things here from the Quadrivium book that I recommended earlier. So this phenomenon is known as the kiss of Venus. And essentially what it states is that every time Venus goes around the sun 13 times, Earth goes around the sun 8 times. So there's this 13 to 8 ratio between Venus and Earth. And for those of you who have some knowledge of the liberal arts, or maybe you're a mathematician, you may have noticed something special about these numbers 13 and 8. And I've given you a little clue underneath there with a list of numbers. But I won't tell you what's special about those numbers, but perhaps you can write that in the comments below. So this means that Venus passes us precisely 2/5 of the way around our orbit, around the year. And it creates these beautiful patterns that you can see illustrated on the right here. This is a photograph from the Wooden Books Trivium. The Trivium is actually sorry, not the Trivium, the Quadrivium. Apologies. Wooden Books Quadrivium. The Quadrivium is an omnibus of various books, and this book is called The Little Book of Coincidence. So, yeah, you can see that. How can I put this? You know, in space, the planets, they're not just rocks floating around in space being flung around by gravity. There's so much more going on than this. What's occurring between Earth and Venus is more like a dance, I would say. It's a beautiful sort of harmony. It's a mechanism that operates very precisely. And that's something that personally I find just utterly fascinating about the universe. I get a sense that it isn't weird that it is that way. Somehow it would be weird if it wasn't that way. That somehow they must be like this. I mean, they must be like this because they are like this. And really, it's a mystery. Like, how have these planets found their way into such a perfectly operating repetitive system? You know, they found their way into this very precise cycle. And, you know, it gives me pause. I don't know what to say about it at some point. I just end up silently contemplating these kinds of things, just wondering what is going on, really. Okay. So another point from the Little Book of Coincidence that I'd like to say before I finish this talk is about our solar system. So most of us have been taught at school this representation of the solar system, which is a two-dimensional representation of the solar system. We have rings going around the sun, and then we have the different planets showing the locations of things relative to the sun. And that's fine. But the reality of this is that the solar system is a three-dimensional system. You know, there's a three-dimensional motion going on, and that looking at the solar system like this is the equivalent of looking at the Earth as though it is flat. We're failing to acknowledge the third dimension. So what would it look like if we saw the solar system in 3 dimensions? Well, it would look something like this. So the image on the top is a more accurate representation of what the solar system is doing. Remember, after all, the star is one of millions of billions in our galaxy that is spiraling around the center of the galaxy. So the sun itself is in motion, and it's moving pretty fast. I don't know exactly how fast, but immensely fast. And the planets are actually spiraling around, chasing after it. You know, that's really what's happening here. We are hurtling at immense speeds into unexplored space. We are constantly moving into areas of space that we have never been to before and we will never be again. That's the reality. And if that doesn't give you pause for thought, then I think you should think about it again. The truth is, we have absolutely no idea where we're heading to. There's an immense amount of force and speed that's going into moving the Earth and the Sun and the whole solar system, and we're just constantly flying into unknown space, and we have no idea where we're going. We could just be flying straight into the jaws of a dragon for all we know. We honestly just have no idea. Which is it's kind of scary as well when you think about that. Just at every moment, tens of thousands of miles an hour, we're just flying into unknown space. So yeah, we'll never be in the same place twice. And I'll leave you with that thought. So that was my slightly janky and clumsy introduction to the quadrivium. If you're interested in learning about the quadrivium, there is this one book that I would recommend that you read first. It's a beautiful book, and it's called The Quadrivium. You can find it at most bookshops online. And yeah, it's a banger. So it used to be in the past that people should learn the trivium before learning the quadrivium. There probably is some merit to that, but don't let it hold you back, okay? This is the 21st century. All the information is just lying around everywhere, so pick up the things that interest you. Personally, I found the quadrivium was an entry point to all of this knowledge. And then then the trivium came later for me. But, you do you. So if you've made it this far, thank you very much. I don't have much more to say. I can't remember what's happening next, so I'll just say goodbye and thank you. Don't give up on the endeavor of self-improvement. It bears fruit that one may not even be able to imagine. Okay. No, I'm really not sure what else to say other than thank you and be well. And hopefully I will see you next time. Okay, bye-bye.